And coincidentally, this is also located on US 287, just like the Texas rest areas we talked about. So just a little coincidence right there.
For your trivia night there.
Right.
Yeah. Scott here, Tyson over there. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me, man.
Thanks for coming as always. We always learn something every time you do stop by. We're going to start with a couple of stories here out of the Lone Star State, and neither are particularly encouraging, Tyson, but we've got to talk about them anyway. We've got one big city considering a truck parking ban, and we've got another one that's already done it looks like. Walk us through what's going on here in Texas.
Yeah, so let's start in San Antonio, Texas. So what's happened there? So right now, let's just talk about the current law. The current law in San Antonio, it bans truck parking in residential districts, which is a common law across the states,
Sure.
when it comes to local ordinances. Just this past September, though, the city proposed a new ordinance basically prohibiting truck parking on non-residential streets between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. That's pretty much the same ordinance that Houston has right now, so kind of modeling itself after that. So that was in September. Just this past month in March, the city, they revised that proposal. It still bans truck parking, but this time it narrowed the scope. So it'd be within 1,000 feet of any residential area rather than just the city itself, in large. So 1,000 feet within any residential area between midnight and 6 a.m. So it extends the hours, so not good. But again, it limits the geographical space by which the trucks would be banned. So kind of put in perspective, the current truck ban affects 210 square miles. The September ban proposal would have included 511 square miles. The current proposal is 401 square miles. I know it's kind of confusing.
Yeah.
So the point is there's some compromise here, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that San Antonio did reach out to trucking stakeholders to kind of get their perspective on the matter. And so I think based on those talks with trucking companies and other stakeholders, they kind of came to the conclusion, it's like, all right, we can reach a somewhat compromise. So again, it still looks like it's going to happen. The city council still needs to approve it. I think right now the current projection is that once passed, this could go into effect as soon as October. So kind of plan for a limited overnight truck parking in San Antonio.
Well, and the good thing too, I think there in San Antonio, as you mentioned, they're listening to truck drivers and their concerns. They're also recognizing that if they're going to, put an all-out ban for trucks on these particular streets, those trucks that are there now are going to have to find another location.
Right.
Those discussions are being had in San Antonio as well. So they're at least talking about the idea of having other places for them to go, right?
Right, yeah. So again, these discussions are including all aspects of the truck parking. So yeah, they're looking for other places, and they're right now we're talking about it, but it won't go into effect till at least October.
Okay.
So in addition to that, we're giving truckers plenty of time to plan accordingly. So we'll see how the final proposal works out.
There you go. I mentioned the other city there in Texas that actually has moved ahead with an ordinance related to parking. Yep. That city is College Station. What is going on there, and what effect is it having on people?
Sure. So like San Antonio, College Station had a ban on truck parking on residential streets, which was actually on the street-by-street basis. The new ordinance that just passed in College Station, it essentially bans truck parking in the city in its entirety. So basically, they had received complaints, and then rather than just do it street-by-street basis, having to amend that ordinance, often, they basically just said, screw it, just a blanket
get out of here
truck parking ban. It's worth noting that the ordinance, it barely passed with a 4-3 vote. So there was some, opposition within the city, including the mayor himself said wasn't all for it. But, majority rules. Something that's worth noting that I found interesting. So from January 2022 to March 2024, so 2-year period, the city received only 37 complaints and issued 44 warnings and 12 citations, which really isn't that much considering that San Antonio is the 7th largest city by population in the U.S. So regardless, the city kind of decided that they have a problem, and this is how they're going to deal with it. They did reach out to stakeholders like San Antonio. So again, they decided that even though it passed just recently, they're not going to enforce it until October. So they want truckers to have plenty of time to plan accordingly. Again, not a good situation, but at least they're giving some notice at that.
Yeah, and again, this is really has been the trend, I think, in recent years. We've seen more and more big cities do this. Minneapolis comes to mind. They are putting down the law there and essentially telling truck drivers to move on. But again, if those conversations continue and they do find alternate places, that is at least something that we could swallow a little bit there. But we'll see how that goes there in College Station. Let's move over to Plano here, not Plano, Texas, but Plano, Illinois.
Correct.
Where there is some, more bad news for truck drivers looking for a place to park there as well. Yeah. Tyson, all sorts of bad news here.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We'll get to the good stuff.
Okay, good.
But really, pretty much same thing. Same situation, same thing, different city, different
rinse
state.
And repeat.
Yeah. This one was a unanimous decision by the city council. Just long story short, vehicles weighing more than 16,000 pounds cannot park on any public street, highway, or parkway unless engaging in commercial activities. So unless you're loading or unloading, can't park. Fines vary from $55 to the first offense to $250 for third and subsequent offenses. So I've seen larger fines. This is kind of like middle of the road fines.
Sure.
So some truckers might find it worth it. I don't suggest doing that.
Yeah.
But as far as fines go, it could be worse. They don't give truckers that much time, so by the time this airs, the ordinance is already being enforced. The local police department said that they were going to have a social media awareness campaign for 2 weeks, and that was it. That was about the
all right.
extent of it. Another thing real quick I want to bring up is that RVs, on the other hand, are allowed to park pretty much anywhere for up to 48 hours. The only problem I have with that is sometimes RVs can be much larger than, just a Class 8 tractor, without the trailer, of course.
Right.
And so if the issue we're dealing here is with the obstruction of the view of traffic, to have a large RV obstruct that view for 2 straight days, that poses a safety risk. And so if we are setting these rules and regulations and ordinances in the name of safety, we need to, in my opinion, be a little bit more consistent in how we do that. Otherwise, you're kind of undermining the objective of the ordinance. So just my little 2 cents on that.
Absolutely, yeah. You mentioned the good news. Let's get to that here.
Yep.
Starting, I guess we're going back to Texas now.
Yeah.
Where we've got some new rest stops going in near Wichita Falls in the northern part of the state.
Yeah, so, you got Texas municipalities doing some not so good things. The state government, on the other hand, doing good things. So, there are 2 rest areas off US 287, just west of Iowa Park, which is outside of Wichita Falls. So, anyway, make a long story short here, $5.4 million contract to add 10 new truck parking spaces in a northbound rest area and 16 truck parking spots in the southbound rest area. So, in addition to that, the other amenities include, restrooms, of course, but security surveillance, better lighting, vending machine, storm shelter. It's your basic rest area with the essential, amenities, but an emphasis on truck parking and then safety features. So it's good to see, the state of Texas kind of dive into that. Yeah,
moving in the right direction there. Speaking of which, Montana also investing in more truck parking, it looks like?
Similar situations. So the Montana DOT just completed a new rest area called the Headwaters Rest Area. And coincidentally, this is also located on US 287, just like the Texas rest area
we talked about.
So just a little coincidence right there.
For your trivia night there.
Right.
Yeah, there you go.
But specifically, it's located on US 287 near the Interstate 90 interchange. If I remember right, that's right by Three Forks.
Yep.
So anyway, the rest area is actually emphasizing truck parking. There's going to be 35 truck parking rest areas versus only 22 passenger vehicle parking spaces. So really, putting the focus on the commercial vehicle traffic that's coming through in that part of the U.S. highway. Again, like the Texas DOT rest areas, an emphasis on safety, LED lighting covering pretty much all of the parking area. Also, I found this kind of interesting. It's going to have a license plate cameras to capture data at the entrance and exit, which I thought was a very odd amenity to be included there. Also, a first of its kind law enforcement office that will be used by the Sheriff's Office, the State Highway Patrol, and the Montana DOT Motor Carrier Services, which I understand might rub some truckers the wrong way.
Yeah, that might make people a little bit nervous there. Yeah.
But to Montana DOT's credit, they claim that it has not experienced noticeable crime activities at its rest areas. So there is an emphasis on safety at these rest areas.
Yeah, I can see that, and if that's the case, that's obviously a positive. If it's enforcement, then things start getting a little hairy there. But we'll see how it goes. But again, not to take away the good news there. The good news is that we've got extra truck parking there in that area, which is needed everywhere, obviously. Let's move quickly here through a couple more stories that you've been following here. Mississippi looks like they're considering overnight parking at way stations.
Yeah, so currently, didn't know this, Mississippi has a policy that bans overnight parking at scale facilities. So in response to that, State House Representative Jerry Turner, he's basically encouraging the Mississippi DOT to drop that policy. And the thing is, that idea is actually being backed by the state DOT's Northern District Transportation Commissioner, John Caldwell. So basically, what the transportation commissioner basically said that the DOT can end this ban on truck parking without the need for legislation. So what's happening right now is that the Mississippi DOT, they're looking into it. Is the best way I can phrase it. They're kind of like weighing the pros and the cons. And so House Rep Jerry Turner, he's kind of overseeing this, but there's been some assurances by the DOT that yes, this is a good idea to drop this stupid truck parking ban for the most part.
Yeah, you go.
They agree.
From Montana and Mississippi to one more M state here, Minnesota. Yeah. The DOT there funding a number of projects. Looks like truck parking is in their crosshairs as well.
Yeah, so Minnesota DOT just announced a round of funding worth $80 million. So among the more than a dozen projects includes 2 truck parking expansion projects. So what we're about to see is expanded parking at the Interstate 94 infield rest area, and then more truck parking on the Interstate 94 Big Spunk Lake rest area. So more emphasis on truck parking in Montana, and the pattern we're seeing here is state DOTs are putting in the money and the efforts to address truck parking. Not so much at the municipality level, but the state DOTs for sure recognize the problem and are funding it for the most part.
Every little bit helps. Tyson, any last thoughts here before we let you go?
Yeah, that was basically what I wanted to point out is this that when it comes to truck parking at the government level, we're seeing positive action at the state and federal level and more regressive action at the local level. So I just want to see the states kind of, put an emphasis on the local municipality or the governments to, let's do something about this.
Yeah, put a little pressure on them for sure. Tyson, pleasure as always. Check out your work at landline.media, every issue of the magazine itself. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.